The following talk is offered freely to ensure that no one is ever denied access to these practices and to these teachings. If you feel inspired to make a donation to support this offering, you can go to my website at jonathanfoust.com. While you're there, you can also sign up for a monthly newsletter designed to support you in your practice. Thank you, and enjoy.
So a woman goes out for a walk one evening, and she sees this little wrinkled man sitting on his front porch. They talk back and forth, really pleasant conversation, and she says, "I can't help but noticing how happy you seem. Well, what's your secret to a long and happy life?" He says, "Well, I smoke 3 packs of cigarettes a day. I like whiskey. I only eat fast foods. And I never exercise." She says, "That's amazing. How old are you?" He says, "I'm 26. So tonight I'd like to talk about aging. Which is a pretty hot topic for most of us. The Buddha said this. This was a little preface. And he talks about he uses the phrase ordinary worldling, which I think is a really great term. Just someone who is not awake, but just simply lost in the trance. That's ordinary worldling. Intoxicated by youth, the run-of-the-mill ordinary worldling does not recognize that aging is unavoidable. Intoxicated by health, the run-of-the-mill ordinary worldling does not recognize that illness is unavoidable. Intoxicated by vitality, the run-of-the-mill ordinary worldling does not recognize that death is inevitable. Intoxicated by possessions, the run-of-the-mill ordinary worldling does not recognize that everything dear will change and vanish. As we see those around us age and as we age, and particularly in this era where we tend to age longer, for many people it's a source of dread and fear. And when you turn to mindfulness, when you're cultivating non-judging awareness in your life, it can be tremendously helpful as you explore your relationship to these inevitable factors of your incarnation. When you calm the mind, you start to see and recognize what's true. So I'd like to talk a little bit tonight about this practice of seeing clearly, your capacity to really see and recognize what is true about life and about reality, and seeing clearly into the nature of resistance, seeing into the natural arising of fear and the clench that occurs when you look at aging and the other inevitables. But also to talk a little bit about how you can let go and how it's possible to move through your relationship with these inevitables with a sense of grace and maybe even with some joy. A recent study revealed the most commonly expressed words before a middle-aged man seriously hurts himself. And those words are, "Hold my beer." We so want to conquer aging. It's on everyone's minds. And of course, we joke about aging because we have so much tension around it. And I heard how many of the artists of the 60s are now in their 80s, and they're revisioning their lyrics. Maybe you've heard some of these. Ringo Starr has got a new song with the line, "I get by with a little help from Depends." Roberta Flack's new song, "The First Time I Ever Forgot Your Face." And Paul Simon's new song, "50 Ways to Lose Your Liver." And my favorite, Willie Nelson, "On the Commode Again." So maybe you've noticed you're aging. That point when you realize there may be less in front of you, the car, than there is in the rearview mirror. And for some people, it shows up as more aches and pains. For some people, it shows up as a lessening of mental clarity. You know, the first thing that happens is nouns. You know, you're looking for names. And it really is an inquiry. How are you holding this reality of your aging? And how do you hold the reality of those you love who are aging? I could go on all night on aging jokes, believe me. But I'll just tell one more. These folks are talking, they're just hanging out in the evening, and they're talking about this great restaurant that they went to last night. His friend said, what is the restaurant? We have to check that out. He goes, "Oh, I'm trying this new learning technique. Give me the name of a flower." The guy goes, "Tulip?" He goes, No. "Chrysanthemum?" No. "Rose?" "Oh, yeah. Hey, Rose, what was the restaurant we went to last night?" It's great to laugh at this stuff. But when we come in contact with the reality of aging, inevitably there's some form of a clench. And one time I saw this so clearly. This is maybe 20 or 25 years ago. Back when I was very involved in the yoga world, I went to one of the first yoga journal conferences. And just checking out the different kinds of yoga. And there's a form of yoga called Mysore yoga. It's from Mysore, India. Incredibly rigorous approach to yoga. And when I went to this class, in this particular form of yoga, you do these incredibly rigorous, complex postures. And you work on them on your own and with a teacher there to kind of advise you. And the class was so grim. And at one point, I heard someone talking about, these two women talking about the posture they're working on. And one said, "Well, how long did it take you to get there?" She said, 2 years, but I'm almost there. And so as I looked around this room, and there were, just quite frankly, there were mostly middle-aged people in this class, I sort of saw that, like, underneath this really grim determination in their practice was a really deep sense of fear. That so many people who were practicing were really trying to hold on to their youth. There's almost this sense of, if I could master these practices, I'm not going to die. And maybe you felt at times a kind of existential dread around your own mortality. It's utterly natural when you watch someone older than you who's gone through their decline, whether it be physical or mental. It can be absolutely wrenching. And for most of us, we don't investigate that wrench. We don't investigate the clench. But looking at that clench, looking at the resistance can be incredibly helpful. Now, the first foundation of this practice of mindfulness is that stress, dissatisfaction, unsteadiness, and suffering come with the human journey. Not necessarily all the time, but it happens. That's the first truth. And the second is, if you look closely at anywhere you're suffering, you'll find a cause. And the cause is something related around holding on. some form of identity, some form of clinging. Something happens and you react. And most of us react to aging with fear. And the fear shows up in a couple different ways. First, there's just the clench of the possibility of losing your life, losing your identity. The second is a fear of losing control of your mental faculties, losing control of your physical factors, and just the fear of what happens as you lose control over your mind and body. And the second is really the fear of losing attention, affection, and love, of those you love and those you cherish. As one writer who talks about aging said really beautifully, he said, it's not so much that everything changes, it's that everything disappears. And when fear runs your life gets really small. And maybe you've noticed how as some people age, the bandwidth of their comfort level gets more and more narrow. At some point I realized that my parents, as they were aging, they didn't want to hear the bad news anymore. They didn't want to hear about my struggles. They just wanted to know that everything was okay. There was something painful about seeing their bandwidth narrow, but I also get it. So, what can you do, knowing that life is changing, that everything about this life is going to disappear? How can you cultivate a sense of joy in the midst of all this? And it has really to do with two things, about changing your perspective, but it's also about remembering, which is a really key piece to this practice, remembering. Shunryo Suzuki was once asked by his students, why should we bother meditating? And he said, so you can enjoy your old age. If through your life, rather than turning away from everything that is hard, but having tea with your demons and making peace with your demons, you will be much, much happier. You'll cultivate what's really thought of as the fruit of the practice, which is equanimity and steadiness. You can cultivate a quality of presence, a quality of goodwill, no matter what is happening externally. That's really considered the fruit. And so it really leads to the third of these qualities of recognizing suffering, recognizing the cause, and recognizing that you can let go. And when you can let go, magical things can happen. There's someone I know who cannot talk in public without reminding everyone that he had been CEO of a large corporation. Maybe you know someone like that. But every comment is, I was once a CEO, and da-da-da-da-da. I also know people who have very gracefully and willingly set down the tools of their trade and supported others stepping up as they've stepped back. I just talked recently to a CEO who said, I no longer have the burning urge to be the leader, but I love being helpful. And for those who are stepping into leadership, I love being available if they want my counsel. Something aided him in letting go, and in that, he has such a greater sense of freedom. So there is a practice of remembering, which can be very helpful. It's referred to as the 5 remembrances, and there are many people I know who, on a daily basis, they they use this as a way of remembering, as a way of sort of setting the stage for their day. So they do this as sort of a preview to their morning meditation, or just to reflect on these words. So if you like, I'll offer these. If you'd like to close your eyes. These are referred to as the 5 remembrances. And I'll read these line by line, and I'll give you a little bit of space after each line. And you might just sort of let the words just flow through, or you might explore kind of just repeating the words after each line and just sensing their resonance. And as one clarification, one of the words that's classically referred to here is the word karma, and that word can also be substituted as actions. So it's what you do. So I'm going to use the word actions here. So if you like, you can close your eyes. And if you like, you can deepen your breath. I am of the nature to age. I have not gone beyond aging. I am of the nature to sicken. I have not gone beyond sickness. I am of the nature to die. I have not gone beyond dying. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will one day disappear. I am the owner of my actions. I am heir to my actions. I am born of my actions. I am supported by my actions. Whatever actions I do, for good or ill, of that I will be the heir. Just take a moment to sense whatever resonance may be there. And then if you like, you can deepen your breath. And if you like, you can open your eyes. When I first reflected on these words, I thought, why would I want to start my day reminding myself that I'm going to get old and get sick and die? That everything I love in this life is going to disappear? And that whatever I say and do, I will create and receive. It's a pretty heavy practice. But what's powerful about it is it's reality-based. And the truth is you have been and you will be visited by what are called the heavenly messengers of sickness, old age, and death. And the truth is you were dealt certain cards at your birth. You are the inheritor of your karma. And you're the creator of your karma. And when you can remember these truths, there are 2 things that can begin to emerge, at least in my own experience. The first is a little bit of wisdom, just seeing more clearly. And the second is a little more compassion. As someone famously said, resolve to be tender with the young, compassionate with the aged, sympathetic with the striving, and tolerant of the weak and wrong. Sometime in your life, you will have been all of these. So reflecting that everything you know, that everyone you love in this life is going to get old and sick and die, how can you go through this with grace? There's a story of an older Zen monk who was talking with the younger monks about celibacy, part of that practice. And they asked him, now that he was in, as an older monk, what was it like? And he said, I'm so relieved. He said, I feel like I've gotten off a bucking bronco. Really seeing the good as you age. One thing my dad, who's now long departed, said that really touched me when I was in college. He said the goal of life is to have no regrets. And I keep saying to Tara, my wife, I said, let's remember that these are the good old days, And part of that recognition, and as we've had conversations around our aging, is we have a real determination not to wait, not to put off the things that really enliven us and draw us. Regret is trying to change the unchangeable. And to get to a place of no regret as you reflect on aging is the courage to grieve. Inevitably, as you cultivate mindfulness or non-judging awareness, you are visited by your regrets. Everything between you and feeling happy or free is inevitably going to find its way to be seen, to be felt, to be honored, and possibly to be released. And as you strengthen in mindfulness, as you strengthen in your capacity to observe clearly without judgment, you develop your capacity to heal the past, to hold the past in wisdom and compassion. And that informs you into reflecting on how you want to live the rest of your life. So another little reflection, if you like. If you might like to close your eyes. And you might again just deepen your breath. Just notice where you feel the breath inside. Inevitably, as you navigate life and you look back, you can sense regrets, opportunities not taken, wounds not yet healed. And you might just sense for a moment of the possibility of feeling at peace with your life to this moment, of holding yourself with compassion, empathy, and kindness. Honoring how in this life you have been learning your life's lessons. And as you sense whatever time you have stretching out in front of you, at the end of this life, the inevitable end of your life, how would you like to feel about your life journey? What do you sense is calling you in your remaining time? Again, you can deepen the breath. If you like, you can let your eyes open. one of the great advantages of being part of the baby boom generation is so much of our world is really designed for us, because we're really, like the majority. So part of how, as we're aging and how as we're dying, we're looking more and more closely at this whole process. And there have been a lot of studies done on aging that really point toward ways that we can age more gracefully. And one of the interesting things is that, as we age, studies show that many people are happier as they age. There really is the possibility of being happier. There's something paradoxical how fewer options actually can increase happiness. And part of it is around really training yourself to find happiness in ordinary things. Part of the passion of youth is looking for intensity, looking for new experiences. And many people report how as they celebrate aliveness in ordinary things and simple rituals, a much deeper sense of satisfaction can arise. There's a Harvard study, which is one of the most comprehensive studies. And they found that at age 50, more of a determinant that if you make it to 80 is not your cholesterol. It's how satisfied you are in your relationships. It has to do with friends and family. Another element that is really critical to cultivating happiness as you age is a sense of giving back. How giving back and service is a profound doorway to happiness and joy, and having a sense of purpose. So part of the practice, again, is remembering that this journey is finite, that everyone you know in no particular order, it will disappear. It's about learning how to bring that sense of mindfulness, that intimacy with life to the smallest things, to find joy in the small rituals every day. And to recognize that one of the most important things, and all the studies kind of really corroborate this, is to cultivate relationships that have meaning for you. And to me, this is one of the most critical elements, that is to recognize that this is something you can do. That if you don't have relationships that are fulfilling, you can cultivate them. And in my life, I've seen so many people, my parents included, who were, sort of rural people who really like their privacy, kind of erring on the side of being so private that they become more and more isolated. And that sense of isolation is very, very challenging. Another is to reflect back on how in some way you can give back. Looking at some way you can have the satisfaction of making a difference for others. And most importantly, as we age, if you remain identified with who you were, and you find it important to announce who you were in your former life, what that's an indicator is to really refresh a sense of purpose in your life. I could have watched my dad, who was a college professor, and he's always been socially, been a real kind of a social consciousness mover and shaker. But he kind of stepped up into social activism. And in his mid-80s, he just got very involved in this one particular community. And for the first time in his life, made contact with the LGBTQ community and made lots of friends, and then suddenly was, lobbying and very involved in LGBTQ issues. And it was just amazing to watch him come alive around responding to an injustice and feeling connected and plugged in. Looking toward meaningful human interaction is one of the most potent things. And again, just to share that story, which many of us have heard, where Ananda, the Buddha's assistant, came up to him very excited. He had this insight. He said to the Buddha, he said, "Is it true that spiritual friendship is half of the holy life?" And the Buddha said, "Don't say that. Spiritual friendship is the whole of the holy life." I see how in our culture, how deeply isolated so many of us feel. It's very easy to kind of fall into that, to find people who want what you want, who resonate with what you resonate with, is maybe the hardest thing to do, but it's perhaps the most important thing that you can do. So this Harvard study said that the things you really want to cultivate as you age are to be physically active, abstaining from use of chemicals, alcohol, nicotine, etc. To develop mature mechanisms that allow you to cope with the ups and downs and disappointments of life. Going to maintain your weight and focus on relationships. And the founder of this study said that when they began this study at Harvard, there have been four generations of people who've headed up the project. He said in the beginning, no one cared about empathy. They had no idea that it had anything to do with longevity. And now they're seeing that this really is the most important thing. So the question then becomes, how do you want to feel at the end of your life? When you look back on this journey that you've been on, what will have been the most important thing? Well, let's close with a little meditation. You might take a moment to, again, just feel your breath on the inside. And if you wish, just imagine yourself at 7 years old, looking in the mirror. And imagine yourself now, in your body now at this age, looking in the mirror. While your body may have aged and changed, have you changed? Your form, your capacities. But you may sense that there's something there unchanging. The life force that animates your body is still there. And some quality of unchanging awareness. We'll just take a few minutes to reflect on an inquiry. when you reflect that this body will age, will get sick, and one day will disappear. And there's no guaranteed timeline in your journey. Given that, what is most important in this life for you? If you could offer yourself some advice, what might that be? And we'll take the next few minutes in silence. We'll close with just a few moments of heart practice. Just sensing if there's anyone in your life who is struggling right now or going through a hard time. And you might just take a few moments to wish them well. And may you feel happy. May you feel peace. May you feel safe from inner and outer harm. May you feel free from suffering. You might take a moment to reflect on your own journey and to offer these phrases to yourself and include anyone who comes into your awareness. May all feel happy. May all feel peace. May all feel safe. May all feel free. As you're ready, you can deepen your breath. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you so much for your kind attention. Also want to take a moment just to thank the church and IMCW and all the amazing volunteers that helped to make this happen. May the holiday season be filled with unexpected pleasures, and to fuel your way, have a cookie and some tea on your way out the door. Our next class will be in January, so I'll send some reminders about that as we go along. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening.